Hi, I'm Brandy. This is Hound Dog Hollow, and today I'm going to start with my books on ancestral veneration. And I have to start with Ancestral Medicine because hands down it is my favorite. Unfortunately, I bought it digitally, so I don't have an actual hardcover book to have you, so that's why we're looking at my iPad. But Ancestral Medicine, Rituals for Personal and Family Healing by Dr. Daniel Four. So this is a very nice book. It goes from like starting with nothing, just very interested in honoring your ancestors, or even kind of like thinking about it, curious, ancestor curious. And it goes, and it just starts out really easily, really simple, small things. So this is these are the contents chapters. I'm going to scroll through like I do with each book. And I've highlighted stuff because obviously I really love this book. So an introduction, just a really nice, just talking about like how you should check this book out, what is the purpose of this book, so on and so forth. So basically it starts right nice and easy, foundations. We're starting with the fundamentals again. So different types of ancestors, different types of spontaneous ancestral contact. Maybe your dead have come to you in dreams or in other kinds of signs or synchronicities in your everyday life. Practices common in ancestor reverence and ways in which ritual and ceremony can facilitate ancestral contact. So all of what's in that chapter is lined out right here, or what's in this chapter is lined out right here. This is his personal story, and it's very interesting. And so basically he started doing ancestor family history research, so like genealogy, and then learning it. I believe let me see, hold on. So he's just talking about different people who have influenced his, like Mongolian shamanism, Lakota. I know he definitely had a lot of interest from Yoruba, and he was initiated of the, I don't want to say this wrong, Ifa Orisha tradition. So, which is Yoruba culture, which I feel bad that I don't pronounce them correctly, but I've only read it. I haven't heard these words out loud very often. So who are the ancestors? Really good, because you might say, oh, I'm adopted, or I don't connect with these people, or, you know, I have a step parent or whatever. It goes through all of those different topics. Consciousness continues after death. Not all of the dead are equally well. It talks about the concept of like how your recently dead may be still working through things that they were meant to work through in life, and they might not be ready to support you in the way that you would imagine your ancestral work is, and that you should maybe step back and work with older ancestors who are in a better position spiritually to be an ally for you. It goes into that. It's kind of it sounds like a complex topic, but the way that they introduce it is very, very easy to understand. So the living and the dead can communicate. That's one of the major tenets, that we can affect in one another. And he goes, how? And so you start out with your family and your remembered ancestors. Those are the ones that you have probably known in their lifetime. So like your grandparents, or for some people, their parents, aunts and uncles, things like that. The remembered dead, it's people who we reach for. Recent or remembered dead include deceased parents, grandparents, children, siblings, and other who we knew during this lives on earth. Then it talks to relating to your family and remembered ancestors, older ancestors, and the collective dead. That's where you're getting into. So contrast the light of a candle to a bonfire. With little knowledge of family history, the night beyond memory dwells close to the present, while for those with extensive records or oral history, memory burns brighter and reach farther back in time. Even so, along all lineages, there is a threshold beyond which names, faces, and family stories are forgotten. Bloodlines among the older collective dead include the most recent ancestor along any given lineage whose name is lost to memory, usually someone in the last few generations. Because frankly, unless you're really into genealogy, and even if you are, our ancestral records only go back so far, and eventually we reach a point where you are related to thousands and thousands of beings, but you have no concept of who they are, what their names were, or any of the information about them. They're still your ancestors. They're connected to you. You go back all the way to the primordial ooze of creation. You go back to the first quadruped that crawled out of the ocean. So it talks about those kind of things. Ancient human ancestors, ancestors of the past 2,000 years, just different information so that you can know. Then you have your individual ancestors, who are your bloodline, your ancestors of lineage. So, for example, what's his example? It's a kind of collective consciousness composed of the individual ancestor spirits in any given line. Recent family ancestors may take on the quality of lineage, such as the deceased parent who seems connected in spirit with their parents and grandparents. When the spirit of a recent ancestor merges with the greater lineage, communication through that ancestor, for example during a dream, can appear to be infused with the weight of authority of lineage and the feeling of being in the presence of a larger energy. So your line, your family line. And collective spirits of your family. So how you can relate to them, because I mean most of us start out with lighting a candle for our parent or grandparent who died, or at least that's how it is in a lot of Latino families, is we light candles for our dead on their birthdays, on their death days, on holidays when we want to remember them. We light candles for our dead. So I grew up in that practice, and I think most people in my family still practice that today. I practice it obviously with an ancestor shrine, but I believe my mom and my sister still do as well. So then it has little exercises at the end of each chapter. It gives you all this information, and then it gives you an exercise to work your way through, which is basically the structure of the book. Spontaneous ancestral contact is when they contact you. So like dreams, synchronicities, so like coincidences, waking contact in non-ordinary states. So I've done this for a while now, and so I will say I was, over this last, Dia de Muertos season, I was at my table and I was cooking Puerto Rican food, and I kid you not, it was literally like my grandpa was at the table with me. And I think what really did it was not the act of cooking our food, but I think the smell, because smell is like the oldest part of your brain. Your sense of smell developed first. Smell is so important for those deep primordial parts of us, and that's science. Look it up. But I think it was the smell of the yuca, or maybe it was the yautía. I don't know, but I swear it was like he was sitting at that table with me and I could see him. And it felt so good. I've had that experience probably in September when I went tide pooling, because that's what we used to do together. It's just when they're contacting you, when they're with you, I know that you know those feelings. No matter how far along on your journey that you are, there has been a moment in your life where you felt so connected to your beloved dead. And it's because human beings crave that, and they crave that, and they're reaching out to us. And sometimes things line up just right that even if you're not paying attention, it will still touch you. So it's really meaningful to me. So waking encounter in ordinary states. And then he has an exercise. What are your experiences with your ancestors? And have you had any of those spontaneous contacts and things like that? You work through that. Each exercise and chapter builds up until you're doing things like elevation and healing of your ancestral line, which is later in the book, which is, one of the main goals. It's not just to to know who our ancestors are and to honor them, but it's also to fix those ancestral curses. And some of them are ours to fix for our family lines, and some of them belong to all of us to fix as a collective, because humanity has made a lot of mistakes. And that's not really super covered in this book, but it is covered in a different book that we'll be going through in the next couple weeks. So ancestral reverence and ritual. This is where we really get like common intentions, rituals, examples, rituals to assist your troubled dead, rituals with ancestors of lineage and place. Ancestors of place are literally the ancestors on the where you are now. So the people whose bones are buried in this earth that I'm living on, that I'm responsible for, that I steward. That's ancestors of place. Eventually, you are an indigenous person, no matter who you are. Eventually, if you go back far enough, you will find your indigenous people, and somewhere the bones of your ancestors are laid to rest in the place where they were the longest. I mean, for me, obviously a long time was Puerto Rico, and then before that, different areas, although, you know, we're a large portion Taino Indian, so in this Caribbean is the Tainos, but also a large portion of African slave and European conquerors, right? That's what it, so what may be indigenous to Puerto Rico for millennia, I'm also have parts of me that are indigenous to Africa and indigenous to Europe as well. And we all have those parts, I believe. Even if you do identify strongly with one thing, we know that the mitochondrial Eve came from Africa so many hundreds of thousands years ago, right? But I digress. I'm getting into science instead of this. So life transition rituals, practices to sustain ancestral connection, and it's really simple. Even just thinking about them, even just lighting a candle, even just having a picture, even just there's lots of really simple, easy ideas that literally anybody can do on any budget. I promise you. Offerings, communication through meditation, divination, dream work, and interpreting signs. It's just different ways you can connect. And then the exercises, ritual to initiate contact with your ancestors. This is a very, if you're starting from scratch, this is a nice place to like really initiate this work. Next part is healing with lineage and family ancestors. And I'm going to zoom through these and just show you the title heads because this is already 12 minutes long and you're kind of getting my idea, right? Family research and initiating ancestral healing. So basically it's about, you know, doing some genealogy, maybe getting your DNA done, finding out, you know, as much as you can about your lines, so your maternal and your paternal line, and going back and going back and going back. And how to do so safely for yourself and your practice, and just all sorts of different information about how you can access that, with the exercise being attuning to your 4 primary bloodlines, which he considers your mother's mother and father, your father's mother and father. Those are so your 2 is your mother and father, and then your 4 is their parents and their parents, and then so on and so forth. You're going back and back and back. But those are the ones that he would like for you to really look into when you first start. This whole ritual. Meeting with ancestral guides, and the guides are the spirits of those who previously lived on earth as our blood ancestors and who are willing and able to support our lives and assist any of the dead who may be troubled. So these are your strong, powerful, put together, so to speak, dead. And they will present themselves to you, and it talks about how to connect with them and how to work with them and how to be safe with them and how to accomplish your goals, which is healing your ancestral line, right? That's why it's called Ancestral Medicine. And then there's an exercise where you practice seeking a guide. I have certain particular people in my line who come to visit me, and I need to do more work in this aspect of reaching out to different ancestors as well. So this is something that I would probably like to work on soon. So then just different things, making different things for your ancestors, praying for your ancestors, surrounding the lineage between you and your guides with healing energy, just lots of different examples. So lineage, ancestors, and the collective dead. And it just talks about, so those not yet born, living descendants, you, living elders, remembered dead, living lineage between ancestral guides and remembered dead. Ancestral guides are like your spiritual matriarchs and patriarchs of your line. And then the collective human ancestors, 200,000 BCE to ancestral guides. So mitochondrial E, obviously, is the oldest that we know of. I mean, as long as we were human. And then before that, when we were something else, and I don't know what that ancestor looks like, and maybe you will connect with them. I don't know. It's up to you. So it's just talking about going back, and as you deepen your practice, you'll go farther back and you'll access different parts of your lineage, and different things will connect with you and present themselves to you. And so basically getting to know your lineage and working through that ancestral work. For most people, these are more advanced topics, and you obviously don't have to dive into any of that until you are called to or ready. So this is a ritual to assist your lineage ancestors. So, and a lot of times we call that an elevation ritual, and it's, you know, it's fairly simple, but it actually takes, you know, a lot of intention and thought and so on and so forth. So that would be something you would do to help heal and elevate one of your ancestors who wasn't, you know, maybe not doing so well, or maybe you just felt like elevating them. It's up to you. Assisting the remembered dead. So these are your dead that you have known in their life and that maybe need some help for you. Emotional healing, forgiveness, unfinished business. Maybe you had a bad relationship. Maybe they had a bad relationship with each other. Maybe there was, like, you know, trauma. I say maybe, but almost certainly there's somewhere in your line. So healing and working with them. Ancestral forgiveness practice is just a ritual where you can work on that as well. Soul guidance for the remembered dead is another type of ritual. I'm going to pick up the pace here because this is going on and on. I'm sorry, guys. I just love this book and I don't want to miss any of the important information. Ooh, I'm only halfway through. Integration and work with living family. So if your living family is interested in connecting in this work with you, how you might do that. And oh, these are all beautiful. Different cultures doing ancestor shrines and remembrance of the dead. Just really lovely. Embody the lineage and offer prayer for the living if they don't connect with you for whatever reason. Or if they do, you can do either one. Harmonizing your 4 primary lineages. Ritual to feast your family ancestors. So a lot of people do that on Samhain, a dumb supper or whatnot, or some variation of that. Honoring other types of ancestors is part 3. So different ways of relating with the body and elements after death. Ancestors a place. We've talked about that. Home is where the bones are. Ancestors who literally are ancestors of you because their bodies are under where you're living. So you are connected in that way. Or part of where you're living. It just depends. And it also covers cemeteries and just different rules about that. Ritual to greet the ancestors of place. Affinity ancestors, multiple souls, and reincarnation. So beloved friends, teachers, mentors, cultural heroes, ancestors of your spiritual tradition and lineage, ancestors of your vocation. Lots of different types of ancestors that you can work with and reach out. They do not have to be just your beloved, your bloodline. They can also be connected to you in different ways that are just as important and powerful. Harmonizing ancestors of family, place, and affinity. How to get everybody to play nice, so to speak. Joining the ancestors. So this is all about how you can prepare for your death and things that you can do. You know, basically, I like this a lot because we don't talk about preparing for death very much in our society. It's kind of a taboo, which is, I think, detrimental and painful for people who are approaching death with fear. Conscious participation in a burial. and who, for those of us we leave behind, we do a disservice. Ritual for the first anniversary of a death. We do a disservice when we don't talk about those things openly, because it literally is going to happen to all of us. We are all going to die. And when we ignore that fact of life and we just don't plan for it and leave behind this void and mess and drama, it's really painful for everybody involved. So just basic appendixes. I would say that this was one of the best books that I've ever read about anything spiritual. I loved this book, and I highly recommend it to you. Ancestral Medicine by Daniel Four. Thank you for watching. I know it's pretty long. I love you guys so much. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.